I don't get why people have to be turned into consumers, customers, service users. It's us, folks. We're people. I mean, if we want to talk about our civic responsibilities, citizenship is a good word, if a bit archaic. Talk about people as service users, then immediately the solutions or the practical strategies that you might identify are framed in the terms of what services, at what cost, at what quality, yes? Whereas you talk about people as citizens, you frame it differently. And there's an equality created immediately, because it's not just about the people with disabilities being citizens, it's also about the professionals as citizens and their responsibility, or the community members as citizens. I want to challenge people to be citizens even when they don't identify themselves as citizens. I want people to recognise that the things they take for granted in community that they value require their engagement as citizens. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, your only options, if you think it through, are a kind of service user, consumer. That's my basic proposition to you, is that we start thinking about the notion of citizenship much more seriously. For me, citizenship is an attempt to get to the heart of what people were trying to talk about when people talk about normalisation or social role valorisation. But the attractiveness for me of citizenship, even though it's a slightly weird word, is that it's something we should all think about. This isn't a special status for disabled people. Oh, how can we make disabled people citizens, as if we already are them? I know many people with learning difficulties who are much better citizens than people with their BMWs who drive to work, come back and sit in front of the telly all evening. Citizenship is, in a way, just maybe a fancy word for treating each other as equals. We need each other. It's a simple thought, but it's a really important thought. When people start talking about independence or needing to be independent or not needing other people as if these are good things, these are bad things. These aren't good things. Our need for each other is critical to our essential humanity. I understand where it comes from, and I value where it comes from in the heart when people start talking about risk-taking and the importance of risk-taking, but I kind of think sometimes we've got this upside down. Actually, freedom's important to keep us safe, because it's freedom that allows us to say, I don't want to do this anymore, this isn't working for me, this is dangerous. And when we have systems that don't protect people's freedoms, that's when we put them in dangerous places. You know, all of this jargon and A, B, C, D, and they're kind of helpful tools, but it's really waking up to the fact that we are citizens, and if we want a decent community, we need to start behaving like citizens. A very nice paper called Positively Local, which describes, it's on the census site, which describes community development activities, and one of the key messages of that paper, which is based on working in some of the most deprived communities, starting in the southwest of England also actually, is that you have to go in looking for the positive capacity in that community. As soon as you start defining that community by all the bad labels it's been given, all of the needs that it supposedly has, you lose it. Yeah. Needs are gifts too, so even our needs, even the things we need, even the things that make us tick, or that we think if we couldn't live without classical music, or I really need help in the morning to get up, all of these needs are also keys to a good life. Funny, we have a very negative conception of needs, but needs is just a part of being a human being. Once you start saying the system demands you have your one-page profile, or the regulators now saying, I want to see your person-centred plan, then the corruption has begun, isn't it? How can you but feed that beast? Because they pay you. And this danger of distraction, that you've done the plan, so you're halfway there. No. You've done the plan, you're 1% of the way there. Because what's really the challenge in education and support is to change stuff. But I feel like the system's quite happy to go, oh, we did the plan, so, are you pleased with us? 20 years ago, there was this bloke called Peter Kinsella, and I joined a team that he ran, and we were talking about supported living. And supported living meant you had a home of your own, and you lived with people you chose, and you were only supported by people you chose.
Yeah, but none of that actually happened.
No, exactly. So what you're talking about is something called residential care dressed up in new language. Yeah, I mean it's such a flawed model, and all we've done over the last 10 years, as far as I can see, is take residential care homes and tarted them up a bit. I think that for most of the 19th century, for most of the 20th century, the people I care about most, people with learning difficulties, have really not been treated as equal citizens at all. They have been treated primarily as subhuman non-citizens, or at best second-class citizens. The journey away from the institutions wasn't very rapid, however. The peak population of the institutions in the United Kingdom was the late 1970s, and as the institutions were closed, one of the things that's really striking is that the way money was spent is very, very limited. The variety of ways in which it's spent is very limited. I mean, this is from Lancashire, and Lancashire had a reputation for being one of the most go-ahead, forward-thinking local authorities in the era of deinstitutionalisation. And yet, most of the money is spent on group homes, institutional units and day centres. You know, what of that money is helping people engage in community, and what of that money is just paying for people to be in segregated services? 92% of that funding is in segregated services. This is not long ago. I took this data, it was about 10 years old. And not lots changed. When we closed the institution, was reopen it in the community, without the park. Now that might seem really a horrible thing to say, but I think if you look at how the money's spent, if you look at how people's lives often work, this is the reality of what the professional system does. In a way, the welfare state certainly is an essential mechanism for lifting people out of the kind of abject poverty that they would be left in if we left people to the markets or we just threw people to the wolves. So, in my view, having social mechanisms that protect people's income and give people real social rights is vital. But what we've discovered is that the social welfare state can both be manipulated so that it doesn't fully protect people's rights, and it is also today under radical attack. Radical attack. And the cuts that are currently happening and the reductions in people's human rights and the effective rights are targeted at disabled people. Again, people don't seem to recognise this, there's no discussion of this in the general media. It's an extraordinary state of affairs. Most citizens are going to confront between 2010 and 2015 cuts, largely in services, not incomes, equivalent to about £500, 546. But people with the severest disabilities, people who would be entitled to social care or are entitled to social care, are going to face cuts in services or income equivalent to over £10,000 a year. Almost a staggering amount of money. The people almost, when you give the facts, people just can't believe it. It just seems impossible to believe. We are moving back into a terrain where people are using the language of stigma and shame around disability. Look at these headlines. These headlines are not just accidental products of peculiar right-wing newspapers. These are fed by government press releases. The 75% of incapacity claimants are fit to work was delivered the day after a DWP press release that set those figures up. And it's nonsense. You only get there by misunderstanding completely how the employment support allowance, one of the so-called welfare reforms, works. What actually happened is that the government decided as a matter of policy to divide all the people who were previously on incapacity benefit into three groups, about 50% of whom they said are fit to work. This is something they decided as policy, not because of any new medical finding. 25% they said, you know, moderate disability can work with support, and 25% really can't work. This is a policy decision. This is not a great discovery of scroungers or skivers, but that's not what it looks like up there, is it? How challenging this time is. I do feel that we are at a point in our history where a kind of complacent assumption of ongoing progress is wrong. Unless we find another way of lighting the flame and getting impassioned about what's really, really important and building new alliances and asking tough new questions, we're going to be in a very difficult place over the next few years, and we will just be overseeing a kind of dismantling of things we've taken for granted, because the funding patterns and the assumptions that are written into the way Westminster is currently funding local government, huge impact is still to have. And, you know. But I do think there is a slight flaw in my own approach in sometimes always tweaking the system and not asking the political questions too. And I think that many of the critics of my own work from the disability movement would say it wasn't political enough. You know, if you don't create
it's fine to create a new system of personal budgets, but if you haven't created the kind of social and political movement that can really challenge and hold our system to account, it'll all fragment. Isn't that what really happened? But citizenship and the freedom of citizens is stuff citizens had to fight for. Whether it be in Rome, or ancient Athens, or all through human history, occasions arise where human beings say, this ain't good enough. We want to live as free citizens. We have real rights and we expect those to be respected. Yeah, and I feel that in one sense that is the challenge of the 21st century, to rediscover citizenship. The good news is that we know how to do good stuff, and we have done for decades. So at one level, all we really need to do is to wake up to the power we already have. But it's us that will figure out, us, people like you, people with disabilities, ordinary citizens, who will figure out these solutions, and they are emerging all over the country. And when we start to get a better sense of what that looks like, then I think we can change some quite big things. And without revolution and blood, but just with a bit of common sense and Britishness. It'll be messy, but it doesn't need to be painful.